Hey, welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. Well, tired. Feel tired. Are you tired? Hey, so we're about to enter the exciting world of music licensing, and we're really almost the entire rest of the semester is going to be spent on that, just how publishers make money. Look, we've been examining the four major functions of publishers and looking at acquisition and development, and now comes exploitation. And so um, I don't want you to, there are some complexities to it for sure, but I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that it's really, licensing is a simple transaction. As I tried to say in our Zoom meeting, it's just like somebody's going to buy a hamburger. And so there's somebody who's selling it, somebody who's buying it, somebody who's acquiring something, somebody who's paying something for that, and that there may be a third party involved, a delivery service, Uber Eats. So there you go. Or it could be like real estate, a real estate transaction. That's all that is you have somebody selling a house, it's a homeowner. You have somebody buying a house, that's the buyer, purchaser. You have the purchaser paying a certain amount of money and getting a house in return. And there might be somebody involved helping with that transaction, namely a slimy real estate agent. So that's all we're doing is we're describing this transaction. Sometimes these are a little bit more difficult conceptually for some reason because you're not dealing with a hamburger that you can hold and eat, and you're not dealing with a house that you can see and you can go into and lay down in. Um, that's real property. It's personal property. This is intellectual property, and it's just rights. And sometimes that confuses people because the transaction that's taking place doesn't involve something that you can see or smell or hear or touch. So just keep in mind that it's just a product being sold, but the product is not something you can hold. It is rights. You're giving somebody rights to do something. You're giving them the license to do something. And don't get tripped up on new terminology that really shouldn't be that new to you at this point anyway. So if we're talking about, first of all, mechanical licensing. That's our first one, which is the very heart of the music business. That is, in order for all of the three income streams to thrive, you really do need a recording to be made of a song. And that's what mechanical rights are. It gives somebody the right to make a recording of a song. And the reason why it's got that stupid name of mechanical rights or mechanical licensing is that it comes from piano rolls. When first piano rolls were manufactured embodying a composition, and they were thought not even to be a copy under copyright law. If you've studied this, I don't know if you have, you should have, is that a recording of a song was historically not considered to be a copy of that song. Sheet music was a copy. Recordings were called mechanical reproductions of that because it took a machine to make that copy of that. So it all comes from piano rolls. Thank God we're past that point. So that's what mechanical licensing is, mechanical rights. The right to record a song and then to sell and distribute copies of that audio recording. So that's all it is. And publishers need that to occur because that's how you get income from people listening to the song, buying the song, hearing the song performed, having a song put into a motion picture. It's got to be recorded first. So this is the very essence of publishing. So for each license, as I told you, we are going to identify 5 variables at the very least. And it's real simple. Licensor, licensee, that is who's licensing the rights, who's acquiring the rights, what rights are being acquired, that's 3. Number 4, what are they paying for them? And number 5, how might a third party be involved? So quite simply speaking, for mechanical licensing, here you go. This should be easy. Once you know what a mechanical license is, which you've learned in survey, is that who's got the rights initially, and that's the publisher. Dang, that's what we're studying all semester. They're the licensor. Who's the licensee? Who needs the rights? That's a record company. A record company, whether it's a formal record company or an artist just making a CD on their own. They're a de facto record company because they're making a record and they're going to try to distribute it. So a record company is the licensee. What rights are needed? The right to record an audio version, audio only, audio version of that composition, and then to make copies of it and distribute copies of it. So if I'm a record company, that's what I need. You've got the rights to the song. I want to record it. I Will Always Love You by Dolly Parton. I would like to make a recording of that. I need a mechanical license. And I'm not doing that. So I need the right to record it, and then I need to, as a record company, make money through selling units. And that's what we're talking about here, not streaming, but selling units. And what am I going to pay for that? Well, as we know, the amount that is paid for a mechanical license is governed by a statute, Section 115 of the Copyright Law, which says that anybody who wants a mechanical license can get one as long as they pay what they call the statutory rate. And that statutory rate is 9.1 cents or 1.75 cents per minute, whichever is larger. So that's what somebody's going to pay for that license. If I'm a record company, I make a recording of it, and then I distribute units of that. Then for every unit I sell, I'm going to have to pay 9.1 cents, which as a decimal, as we know, is 0.091. So I'm either going to pay that full rate, or I'm going to negotiate for a lower rate, which is possible here in this country. Not in other countries, but here in this country, I can go to the publishing company and say, I don't want to pay that entire amount. Let's make a deal so I pay less than that. And the most common reduction is 75% of that rate. And you should have this just roll off your tongue, because 9.1 cents has been the statutory rate for over 10 years now, I believe. 75% of that is 6.825 cents, or as a decimal, 0.06825. Okay, so usually a record company is going to pay between that 3/4 rate and the 100% rate for every unit they distribute. There you go. It's pretty simple, isn't it? And then there might be a third party involved, and quite often is. And that is a mechanical licensing and collection agent. That is, sometimes publishers don't want to be bothered by engaging in this licensing, and I'll give you the reasons why they might not want to. And so they tell somebody else to do it for them. And there are mechanical licensing and collection agents here in the United States, one very, very prominent one called the Harry Fox Agency. And there are other agencies all over the world, usually affiliated with the government, who will take care of that task for the publishers. They will issue the license, they will collect the royalties, they will take a little percentage for themselves for doing all this for the publisher, and then they will send the rest off to the publisher. They are acting as that publisher's agent. That's what a third party does. They act as somebody's agent. And so it's easy to remember that. Is there a third party involved in this? An agent? Well, yes, the Harry Fox Agency. It's right in the title. Harry Fox. Harry Fox. What does the fox do? They're an agent for the publisher. Okay, so there you go. That's simply what's going on there. Is that a publishing company makes money from issuing mechanical licenses to record companies at the 3/4 or 100% rate. That record company has the right to then make a recording and sell and distribute them and pay royalties to the publisher. Perhaps the publisher has hired the Harry Fox Agency to consummate that transaction for them. All right, you got that? And this is important, I think, in the header on this outline. I hope you have the outline in front of you. It's really important. We're not really that concerned about mechanical licenses and some of the intricacies as much as we used to be interested in them, because mechanical licenses really cover the sale of physical and digital units. And we know they are diminishing seriously, and that streaming money is where everything is now. That's handled a little bit differently, but you should know you still have to get a mechanical license in order to record the song. So the mechanical license is necessary, even though the payment terms may be antiquated with what we think of as mechanical licensing through digital and physical units, because that's just almost an historical fact at this point. So the streaming royalties will be handled completely differently, though you need a mechanical license to initially make that recording. Is that clear? Take a moment to think about it, okay? All right. Yes, you should have this outline in front of you. I got it. Yeah, okay, so this is really important, because I know some of you don't want to go into publishing. You should. It's fun. But even if you don't, I can guarantee you mechanical licensing is going to come into play in your life and career somehow, some way. Either you're going to be curious as to how to do this, or somebody else is going to be curious and is going to ask you, how do I get a mechanic? I want to record somebody's song. What do I do? So you should know that. That should just fall right off your tongue. So you know how the process, at least the 5 variables, work. There are traditionally 3 ways in which somebody might acquire a mechanical license. The first way is to go through the compulsory licensing provisions of the copyright law. That's section 115 I spoke to you about. And that is, they have a procedure that you can follow where you just have to notify the copyright holder. The song must have been recorded and released one time under the authority of the copyright holder. You can only make an audio-only copy of it. You can't change the fundamental character of the song. You've got to pay the full statutory rate for every unit that you distribute. You have to account to the publisher every month. Every month. You have to send them a statement. Oh, I sold 1,000 of these at 9.1 cents each, and here's your, whatever that comes out to be, $91? I don't know. And you have to account to them and pay them every month. And you may also be under an obligation to provide an audited annual statement to make sure that you're paying accurately and honestly. So that's what you could do. That's one way to get a mechanical license, is to go through that process that is outlined in the statute. Please keep in mind some of those parameters of that statute. First of all, it must have been recorded and released one time already under the authority of the copyright holder. That means there must be a version of it out in the marketplace. If a songwriter writes a song and a publisher has a hold of it and nobody's ever recorded it, you cannot follow the procedures of the Copyright Act to get this. Number 2, audio only. If you're going to make a video and put it on YouTube, it will not cover that. Just audio only copies, digital or physical copies. You can't change the fundamental character of the song, which means you can't do a parody of a song and get a compulsory license to do that. You can't change the lyrics. You can't change the melody in a fundamental way. You can't sample a song and put it into a new song because that fundamentally changes the song. So there are parameters for this compulsory mechanical license. Now, that all being said, that there's a procedure in the copyright law and you can just follow it. So if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to record I Will Always Love You, what do? You can tell them, hey, you can just notify the copyright holder and follow the procedures in the Copyright Act for how to get that license and how to operate under that license. But you won't tell them that because hardly anybody ever does that. Hardly anybody ever does that. Do you hear that? How often do people get compulsory mechanical licenses? Not very often. And that is because usually record companies want to somehow negotiate with the publisher to get better terms or some additional rights at the same time. So normally what you would tell somebody who asked you how do I get a mechanical license, you say go to the publisher or to their representative. I forgot who that is. The Harry Fox agency, and tell them you need a mechanical license and they will give you one. And maybe you can negotiate better terms or additional terms that are not contained in the Copyright Act. So number 1, you might want to try to negotiate the rate and say, I only want to pay the 3/4 rate. Instead of 9.1 cents, I want to pay 6.825 cents. And maybe they'll do that. And historically, a lot of publishers would grant the 3/4 rate because they were so anxious for people to record their songs. And a lot of recording artists had the bargaining power to say, I'm not recording it unless it's the 3/4 rate. So if Madonna or Michael Jackson or Celine Dion, I'm going to make you cry now. Celine Dion wanted to record a song, they would tell the publisher, hey, I only want to pay the 3/4 rate, and I'm not going to record it unless you give me a break. So they might have done that. Publishers are much more interested these days in staying close to that 100% rate. But you might have a shot. Number 2, you might want to negotiate for less frequent accounting, and that is quarterly. So most mechanical licenses are issued and are accounted for and paid on a quarterly basis. So instead of being a record company that has to count up how many units they sold every month and pay, they only have to do it every quarter. And usually the statement and money is due 30 to 45 days after the end of the quarter. And just like the rest of the business, it's moving to try to get more rapid than that. But right now, it's traditional that that's quarterly. Additionally, you might need some more rights other than just the ones granted under a mechanical license. You might need the right to reprint the lyrics, in the booklet, CD booklet, or liner notes or wherever that exists these days, digitally or physically. So you get a license to reprint the lyrics. Usually that is free, or as we say in the business, gratis. If you like to speak Latin, do you? Gratis. So usually a record company would get a free license to be able to reprint the lyrics in their packaging, etc. You may need a video license. Now, in the days where videos didn't make money, usually as a record company, you could get a sync license for a promotional video for no money as well. But nowadays, videos make money on YouTube and in many other circumstances. So there will have to be some arrangement as to how the money is shared for the exploitation of the video. So that's the usual process that people are going to go through. Did I do that? I did. If you do go through the Harry Fox Agency or get a mechanical license, and I have to go back to Murfreesboro because I don't have a mechanical license on my computer. You see mechanical licenses, when they're granting rights to do that, they are written very narrowly and specifically. Remember those words? Narrowly and specifically. So you're granting the right to the record company to make a recording by a particular artist for a particular record, and used to be, and still is, for specific types of exploitation, that is formats. So it might say vinyl, and then it eventually would say cassette tape, and then it would say CD. So very specific as to how it may be exploited. Because if a new technology comes up, you want to be able to, as a publisher, renegotiate perhaps a better rate. It might have been initially in 1987, you granted a license, mechanical license at the 75% rate because the artist or record company had a lot of bargaining power. And now all of a sudden it's 2000 and people are selling CDs and they need a license to be able to expand to be able to sell CDs. And so you say, okay, we'll include CDs now that you can make, but now I want it at the full rate because now you've got power. The song's already been out. They need the license, otherwise they can't exploit it as a CD, etc. So these licenses are when you're somebody who's granting rights, remember this. In the last example, we had a songwriter granting rights to a publisher, and we wanted to make sure that that songwriter was very narrow and specific in the rights they were granting the publisher. Now we're in the publisher's shoes, granting rights to a third party like a record company. The grantor of rights is going to want those licenses and rights to be as specific and narrow as possible. You can flip it and be a record company, and some of the other licensees will speak about, and you'll understand that you need these licenses to be as broad as possible. And so there's a little friction as to how those licenses might end up. But here, initially at least, the publisher is the one who's got the bargaining power to do so. All right. So those are two ways in which somebody who wants to record a song can get a mechanical license. They can avail themselves of the provisions of the Copyright Act and get a compulsory license. How often does that happen? Not very. Or they can go directly to the publisher or the publisher's representative and negotiate a license, and they may get better terms. Number one, instead of 100% rate, maybe they can get the 75% rate. Number two, instead of having to pay every month, they only have to pay every quarter, and there's no obligation for the record company to generate audited statements every year. Okay? All right. It's two ways. Did I say there were three? Was that me? I don't want to do the third one. I don't want to. I'm going to go get some water. I'll be back in 5 seconds. Here we go. Just getting water. I'm getting water. Yes, look, I'm back. Need some hydration. You need some hydration too, because this third way you get a mechanical license is the most difficult. There are two things that I find in my career as an instructor and even operating in the business. There are two things that for some reason, and I really haven't figured out what they are in 20 years, there are two things that a lot of people have trouble understanding. One is specifically and precisely how the work made for hire law operates. And luckily we haven't confronted that head on in this class. That's for your copyright law class. The second thing is what is colloquially, did I say that? Colloquially, it's fun. Colloquially referred to as the Controlled Compositions Clause. Okay, you with me here? I know you've heard of it before. Let's see if you can get it down. It's not as important as it used to be, but it's still important for the instructive lessons and how people behaved with respect to this clause. All right, are you ready? Because this is complicated. This will be the whole rest of this portion of the video. The third way that mechanical licenses are quite frequently acquired is that when a record company signs a recording artist to a record deal. Here it is. Here's the record deal. See it? Wrong. Whoa. It's 80 pages. Look at that. And that record deal is going to have all sorts of provisions in it, isn't it? So I'm the record company, and hey, I'm signing you for 7 albums. Whoa, that's how long it's going to last for till you deliver 7 albums to me. Oh, look, I'm going to pay you an advance of $250,000 every time I exercise an option under this thing. Woo! Oh, we're going to spell out the recording procedure that we go through. We're going to spell out that I'm the record company. I own the masters and the copyrights there too. It's going to spell out how much I pay you in royalties. I'm going to pay you a royalty of 20% of whatever I make from this record. That's going to be your royalty on this record. 20% royalty. That's your artist royalty. All right. Look at, now we're studying the recording agreement. Look at this. We're on page 61. Page 61. Here we are. On page 61, the record label, that's me. I'm going to say to you, the artist, that's you. You and you and you and you and you. Jack. Jesse. Fiona. Cassidy. Sophia. Cody. All right. You're the artist. Okay, page 61. This is what it's going to say. I'm the record company. I know that I'm going to have to make your records, and you may be the writer of those records, the writer of those songs. So I want you, within this recording agreement, to grant me a mechanical license for every song that you write. And so now in this recording agreement, I don't even have to do anything. Anytime you write a song, this provision kicks in and I have a mechanical license. That's called a controlled compositions clause because a controlled composition, again, who the hell names these things? This will confuse people. Just pretend it's any name. It's Murray. But a controlled composition is a composition that an artist writes and records. There is a longer definition that normally in a normal semester, COVID-free, I would show you the exact controlled compositions clause, but a controlled composition is defined in the recording agreement as any composition written, owned, or controlled in whole or in part, directly or indirectly by the artist or the producer who works on the record. Yeah, that's a whole long definition. I'm not going to make you be responsible for that. Just simply, but oversimplified, what it is any composition that an artist writes and then records. That's called a controlled composition. And the important part of this provision is how the record company really takes advantage of the artist. Because usually, historically speaking, artists have very little bargaining power. So they're giving up stuff, and they're giving up ownership, and they're getting tied to a label for 7 records, and they're getting a paltry artist royalty. So here, the record company says, as long as I'm screwing you in all these other areas, let me screw you on mechanical royalties too that I'm going to have to pay. I'm a licensee here, and you, the artist / your publisher, are the licensors for this mechanical license. And in this agreement, it says, you hereby grant me a mechanical license at 75% of the statutory rate. So right away, they're forcing the artist to agree to the statutory 75% rate. So lower. There are also some other things in there that are very, very, very troubling. You with me? You with me? First of all, it will say 75% of the rate in effect at the time, at some time. It might say at the time this agreement is entered into. So if you entered into this agreement in 1990, then it's going to be the statutory rate that's in effect in 1990, which was probably 4 cents. It's 4 cents. And then when they sell a record in 2019, it's still 75% of that 4 cents. Your rate has been frozen at that time. It's horrible, 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 horrible. So you have people that signed these agreements in the 70s where the rate was 2 cents and they're being paid 1.5 cents per song. 1.5 every time the record company sells Dark Side of the Moon, unless that contract was renegotiated, they're paying 1.5 cents per song for money, for Breathe, for all those great songs. 1.5 cents, even though the current rate is 9.1 cents. Sometimes it's frozen at the time you enter into the agreement. Sometimes it will say the rate in effect at the time you deliver the record, the rate in at the time the record is released. These are all very bad provisions and should be stricken out. Stricken out. And I'll show you how we do that in another. I got to drive to Murfreesboro. I'll show you how to do that. But it should be the rate that is in effect at the time of sale or manufacture, the same way it would be under a compulsory license, the same way it would be under a negotiated license. So you try to get that out of there. It also will say it's the rate for a minimum length composition. So if you were prog rock, like Pink Floyd, prog rock, or Rush, I slap at the bass, man. I slap at the bass. If you're somebody who, a recording artist who writes long songs, an 8-minute song, 8 minutes and 15 seconds, the actual statutory rate for that 8 minutes and 15 seconds would be 9 times 1.75 cents. Because remember, the statutory rate is 9.1 cents or 1.75 cents, whichever is larger. So it would be that. But in this clause, it says the minimum statutory rate in effect. And so you would only get 75% of 9.1 cents, not 1.75 times 9, which would be a whole lot more. It would be 15 or 16 cents. All right? So if you are negotiating a controlled compositions clause, which is not as important anymore because of the lack of physical and digital sales, the first thing you do is say, I don't want the reduced rate anymore. I want 100%. I want 100% of this thing. And then secondly, you would say, I don't want the rate to be frozen at any time. It's the rate that's in effect that you sell this particular unit, so that when the statutory rate goes up, my rate goes up. And then thirdly, you'd cross out that minimum statutory rate, the minimum part, so that if you were somebody who wrote longer songs and fewer songs, then it wouldn't be appropriate for them to reduce it down to the minimum of 9.1 rather than the per minute rate. Okay? All right. Got all that? Here's one more complexity. I'm just going to introduce you to it right now, and then I'm going to explain it in another video because for some reason I'm already at 30 minutes here. Okay, so here we go. There's one additional provision in a controlled compositions clause, and what it does is it sets a cap, a maximum amount that the record label wants to pay in mechanical royalties when they sell any configuration of the artist's material, most notably an album, typically. So what it will say in this controlled compositions clause, which now I am getting in my car right after this and going to get it for you. This controlled compositions clause is that the maximum me as the record company wants to pay, no matter how many songs you have on this thing, is 10 times the rate you've agreed to. So the artist must agree that the label will never have to pay any more than, in this case, 68.25 cents every time they sell a full-length CD. Anytime they sell a full-length CD. So, doesn't matter. That's 10 times the rate that was agreed to. That's the 3/4 rate, which was agreed to. So, no matter how many songs are on there, the label's saying, I'm only paying 68 cents. No matter how many songs, and no matter where those songs came from. And so that causes a great hardship on the artist who puts a lot of songs maybe on a CD, and even more importantly, for an artist that covers other people's songs. Because it may be that if you're Celine Dion and you record other people's material, it may be that you're getting 10 songs in, even 10, And those publishing companies, they don't care what your controlled compositions clause say. They want the full rate, 9.1 cents for every song. So you do 10 songs, how much is the record label liable for? If you've done 10 songs and each song is licensed to the record label at 9.1 cents, every time they sell a full-length CD, they have to pay 10 times that full rate to each publisher that they got songs from. That's 91 cents. Guess what? You guaranteed them they would only have to pay 68 cents at the most. What's going to happen? Let's leave that for next time. I'll see you soon.